Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Europasaal. This is our second panel today here in the Europasaal at the 2023 Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. It's such a pleasure to have people here live in this space. It's a pleasure to have my panelists as well. I'll introduce them in just a moment, but first I want to introduce today's session. So our first panel here in the Europasaal today, we talked a lot about grids and about electrification, and in our session now, we're going to look at some of the lessons the off-grid sector has taught us in recent years in this panel called Innovation and Integration as Levers for Financing the Off-Grid Sector. What we really want to talk about, namely, today is how we can meaningfully advance rural electrification by incorporating some of the benefits of today's off-grid technologies, and how can integrated approaches to off-grid projects contribute to minimizing risks within the sector and become a stepping stone for rural electrification? We have a lot of great questions for our panelists today. We will also have an opportunity later on in the session. If someone in the audience has a question, I'll let you know when the time comes for that. You can raise your hand. It's sometimes a little hard for me to see in the lights, but Linda will also be able to bring a microphone to you if you have a question. Right now, I would like to introduce my very esteemed panel of guests. And throughout today's panel, including with our introductions, we're going to start from the government side, then we'll get a global view from the ISA, and then we'll hear from industry and implementation. So, seated just to my left, Dr. Habtamu Itefa-Geleta, the Minister of Water and Energy from Ethiopia. In the middle, Thomas Mbomba, the Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration of Ghana. Dr. Ajay Mathur, the Director General of the International Solar Alliance. Closer to me, Camille André Bataille, the CEO and co-founder of Anka, Madagascar. And last but not least, Noara Kebir, the founder and managing director of Microenergy International. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Let's start off with a round of statements, really more of a status update. From your perspective as a public or a private stakeholder, how has the off-grid sector evolved in the past few years, and what opportunities do you think have come about as a result? Dr. Habtamu?
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a very good question. Actually, when we are talking of energy, sometimes, but always to say there should be a way out to engage private sectors, because the demand is so high, and the government cannot only afford the electrification in every part. So in my country, Ethiopia, we believe engagement of private sector is very important and vital, especially on the mini grids and off grids of solar, mini hydro, wind, where we have good practice already going on. We believe this will be narrowing the gap that we are demanding to fulfill at the end of 2030. There we say we have to create accessibility for all citizens in our nation. So it is the backbone and a very important one.
Thank you very much. Thomas Mbomba, Deputy Minister, your status update. How has the off-grid sector evolved in the past few years, and what opportunities do you think have come about as a result?
Thank you, panel. For Ghana, we also believe that the opportunities, there are numerous opportunities that associate with the off-grid project. As a result, we think that we need to be able to develop it well and to also veer into other areas so that it could go a long way to improve the livelihood of the communities that we are targeting. We also believe that when we are able to veer into other areas like solar, like thermal energy, like wind energy, it is going to also lower the emission of this green gas. And as a result, a lot of communities and people can improve their life and also grow in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ajay Mathur, Director General of the International Solar Alliance, a status update.
So, number one, we have seen a huge increase in the amount of people who are connected through off-grid systems. In the past few years, I think between 2012 and 2021, it went up from 29 million to something of the order of 179 million. That's a number of people. This obviously means much more money came in, and money increased by almost 10 times during this period. That's number one. Number two, what also has happened is that the normal rural electrification programs have slowed down. And we are now at the stage where if the current rate of rural electrification through grid extension continues, we will still have over 650 million people unelectrified by 2030, when we had hoped that the goal was SDG and everybody would have electricity. And the third issue is that today, with declining costs, we are in a situation where if the grid is more than 10 kilometers away, and you need to extend it for 10 kilometers, or if people are using diesel, solar off-grid systems and batteries are the cheapest way of providing electricity. It's been a huge revolution that we have seen in this past decade.
Thank you very much. Camille André Bataille, an industry perspective.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to repeat some statements that were just made, but I think that one major evolvement was the understanding or the acknowledgement that off-grid solutions can actually be complementary to on-grid solutions. I think that this has taken a lot of time, but now it's pretty clear that you reach the last mile, and especially in low demographic dense environment, off-grid solution can be very helpful and the cheapest solutions to achieve our goal. And I just want to mention that in many countries, and I've seen that in Madagascar, regulatory framework has also evolved in the right way a lot. Just to take the example of Madagascar, but new law on electricity, bringing a grid code, acknowledging the role of renewable energies in comparison to thermal and conventional energies in the past, has been a huge progress. And just a last piece of information also regarding financing. I think that blended financing has also, come to the environment, brought a lot of positive things to the market. Obviously, we're just not yet that in terms of effectiveness and amount that are needed to really scale up. But at least we're seeing some more creative and innovative instruments that we can combine all together.
Thank you very much. We're going to come back to finance a little bit later in the panel discussion. And Noara Kabir, for our final sort of status update, where we are right now.
So from my perspective, working in this sector for more than 20 years now, we've been talking about, when we were talking about off-grid, we were always talking about households, electrifying households, maybe electrifying social institutions like schools or health centers, etc. But actually, I see now a huge new sector, off-grid sector, coming up in agriculture. Agriculture is the biggest off-grid sector which we have now out there. And even for us, let's say, as industry players, etc., we're going into countries which have achieved almost 100% electrification, like Tunisia, Jordan, Algeria, just Indonesia, and see, it's a very little amount of people who still need to be electrified in terms of their households, etc. But the potential for decentralized renewable energies and what we call the off-grid sector in agriculture is growing in a very, very fast pace. So this is where we see, today we speak about the huge potential of the off-grid sector, etc. We mainly see it in the space of agriculture.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to go now to individualized questions for each of you. A reminder, make sure you keep your mics close enough to your mouths. Sometimes when the doors are open, it's a little hard for us to hear. Your Excellency, Ethiopia has an ambitious national electrification program under which it wants to electrify, I think, around 35% of the population with off-grid technologies by 2025. So what do you think are the essential key challenges in accelerating the implementation of off-grid energy solutions to those rural communities in Ethiopia?
Yes, just before coming to the challenge, I will say a few points regarding to the potential we do have. In terms of hydropower, we have more than 50 gigawatts potential, where we have developed about 5.1 gigawatts so far. And 5.1 is under construction, will be completed in less than 2 years. Geothermal is about 10 gigawatt, and wind, more than 130 gigawatt. Solar, about 5.5 kilowatts per meter square per day we can generate. So we can imagine by multiplying the area where we can have. The issue is now challenge. Why not really we are not developing our potential? From what we have only 48% accessibility. The remaining 52 is in deficit. So we have big challenge to implement, especially off-grids. One is the tariff, in such a way that we can attract people to come and invest, and even the customers can pay back. That's one critical issue. The other one is how even we can link between the energy mix is also another challenge that we have to really address in Ethiopia and as well. The third one is the settlement of the people itself is another issue, where we do have scattered settlement in some place, difficult to connect them by green lines, and we are going for some kind of household level. These kind of things are really a big challenge for us to go for the off-grid energy system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Mbomba, a question for you. Ghana has one of the highest electrification rates in sub-Saharan Africa. I was just hearing you have, I think, 88.75%. So you have just under 12% of the remaining rural population still to go, which you want to do by 2025. What do you need when it comes to conditions and available technologies in order to reach this goal?
Thank you. As you rightly alluded to, Ghana has a lot of community that are on national grid. We are about 88.75 connected to the national grid, and we are targeting by 2024, we are targeting about 90% of our communities. And what we need is funding. If we are able to get reliable funding, and we can be able to also connect the rest of the community and to accelerate the pace of the connection. That is one. Another issue that we think we need is the knowledge sharing. We have different countries and what is peculiar to those countries. And we believe that if we are able to share knowledge across the world, like this particular dialogue today, if we learn from each other, and then we can also improve our transportation access. We also have a challenge over there. Some of the communities are scattered, and some are along the river banks. So the transportation becomes a challenge. And we think that if we are able to improve on our transportation, we can go a long way to be able to achieve our target that we have set for the 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think knowledge sharing, one of the most important topics that's brought up across panels through the whole BETD. Dr. Matur, I'll come to you next. With more than 110 countries that are signed up, the International Solar Alliance is a voice really for a large portion of the world's sunshine countries. From this sort of macro perspective, how do you think risks in the off-grid sector are viewed today? And what's the best way to overcome obstacles in this regard?
Well, we get new members almost every month. It's now 114.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I'll make a correction.
And tomorrow it may possibly be 115, but be that as may. See, the key problem that occurs is that the regulatory framework of countries often forms a barrier against private sector investment coming in. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go with government funding, yes, you can. But distribution utilities are normally used to large projects. Also, a very large number of governments have borrowed up to here, and therefore there is no sovereign guarantees available. You need to pull in the private sector. So the first thing that I would say is having the right regulatory structures to pull in resources for off-grid sector. The second is people, particularly for management. You can set it up, but then who will manage it? And therefore, capabilities for this capacity building are important. That's the second one. The third is ultimately the availability of resources, particularly at remote places, which may end up making them costly. So ordering them in bulk, doing, say, 10 of them at a time, often reduces costs. These are relatively simple things. All of them are doable. We believe that solar, and particularly solar mini-grids, is the way to provide rural energy access for all today.
Thank you very much. Camille André Bataille, a question for you. I know that one of Anka Madagascar's projects is helping to provide electrification to 50 villages in southern Madagascar. What kind of integrated approach has Anka chosen for projects such as this one? And what kind of benefits for off-grid project models does your approach bring?
So it's a little bit more than 50 villages. We have to correct a few numbers, but it's so fun. It's only one of our projects. I can relate to what Nora said earlier about tidying energy access in agriculture, and that's what we've been trying to do through a concept, an approach that we see as holistic. We're trying to build a cost system. Basically, the idea is not to consider energy as an end, but as a mean to power uses. So we're all talking about productive uses. Thing is that we've been considering individual productive uses for very long, and I think that now we have to consider more like value chains and more collective uses. So our agri-grid approach, as we call it, and probably we can change the name, it's not very sexy, but is to tie it in the Nexus business case, an agri-component with energy access. Agri-component can be either irrigation, cold storage, agri-processing, whatever, but to really tie those activities into one same business case with multiple benefits and impacts. The first one is obviously to increase the demand on the grid, and obviously we need more consumption to make mini-grid projects viable. But it makes no sense to just increase the demand if it doesn't bring any impact or added value to the communities. It's just not about consuming just to consume. It makes no sense. So the idea behind that is to create more jobs, is to go for productive activities that can bring more money, that can, shift or help current households with low purchasing power to become more wealthy and to become better customers on the grid. So we're trying to build this viable and virtuous cycle. Obviously, we've been testing at a small scale only so far. Why? Because our idea behind that is also at a more overall view to tap in the funding from all the sectors. For the moment, we're only talking about funding coming from the energy sector. But what would happen if tomorrow we'll be considering money coming from agricultural sector, tourism sector, education, climate action, whatever? We need to combine all of these fundings to make it happen, because at the moment we're missing the point in terms of volume of money injected in the sector, and we're not moving fast enough to achieve the goals. So this is one way that we found to bring our piece to the puzzle.
Thank you very much. We are definitely going to come back and talk about funding later on. I see you. I know you want to probably dive in, and we'll get there in just a second. But first, I want to come to Noara Kabir of Microenergy International. I think your current lighthouse project is called MG Farms, and it involves installing smart grids on farms in Northern Africa. What is particularly innovative about this project, and what's its potential to be a game changer for the global energy transition?
Yes, so in MG Farm, we are not only electrifying pilot farms in different regions in North Africa, we are also digitizing them in order to collect data and to create what we call digital twins of these farms. And with the data of these farms, we are then feeding econometric energy models, which help us actually to convince policymakers about the economic advantages of electrifying agriculture with renewable energies. And so definitely we think that there is electrifying agriculture first in terms of regulation. It's still not a totally open space, but here we are still able to change things, to design new regulations, etc. So it's a very nice entry point for renewable energies in general. And we want to strengthen this point, particularly by digitizing this and by combining pilot projects with econometric models, so that we can directly persuade policymakers on the impact that this can have.
Thank you very much. Let's talk now about finance. I think you've already brought up funding and finance. Let's just dive right in. Your Excellency, I'll come back to you first. I know that the effects could have been worse, like in most of the region, but Ethiopia's off-grid sector has really suffered from crises in recent years. But what kind of beneficial framework does Ethiopia offer to the private sector in order to re-energize and consolidate investments?
Yeah, one of the challenge we have is, yes, true, it's the finance. One way out is to have some kind of incentive package for investments, especially when they are working on off-grid. Some way out is through the provision of certain tax exemptions for some trade for investors who want to come and work on Ethiopia. Second one is to have free of land. Offer is already there for them. As we know, solar demand large size of land, parcel of land, so that people can have a place for the panel to install that and then supply into the system. Third, we are working with banks actually, which is not yet implemented, but it is one way out how they can create opportunity for small and micro enterprise. That is what we say cooperative bank. In regional one, they really take into consideration for different unions to support them, especially on the solar, again, specifically that we are working. These are somewhere where we are supporting, but the challenge still remains big in Ethiopia and for sure everywhere due to the global markets, what's going on in terms of manufacturing sectors and importing even the batteries, the lithium, and the solar components. So we have such kind of challenge. There are also some way out, which need to be still more to invest upon and make better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Mbomba, what kind of financing models enable the reasonable implementation of projects and adequately reflect the risks of off-grid projects?
Thank you. The off-grid system in Ghana, per se, we have difficulties in financing because the investors see it as an unattractive venture. And we think that it will be good for not to be focusing only on the electricity. We have to also look around some of the socioeconomic conditions that could improve the lives of the people, which they can also generate income out of those outcomes, and to make the sector very attractive. What we also think can also make the sector attractive is to be able to look for reliable funding, to be able to look for support from donors, to also look for support from other sources, so that we can make the sector attractive to the private sector. To the private sector, though, is good, but they are looking at the profit margin. But most of the time, these communities are communities that are economically not good. They don't have economic standing, these off-grid communities. So when private sector comes and they are not able to stand on their own to be able to generate income, to be able to finance the project, the private sector may want to inflate the costs, which will not be good for the communities. So we think that to be able to finance the project very well, we need to diversify the area to include other things that could make the beneficiary communities or people more income generating to be able to support the projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go on to the next question, I of course want to give, if you have a response to something that someone has said so far, I do hope that you'll respond if you want to. Go ahead, please.
Well, one of the things that I do want to touch on, and this is something that Camille talked about, Nora talked about, is the need to provide a range of services. Whether it is cold storages, whether it is pumps, whether it is mobile services, all of these add to the income that is generated by the off-grid solar. But the question that I have, both for you, Camille, and for you, Nora, is how can we learn about the business models that can scale this up? And the business models could be government-driven, utility-driven, or they could be individual investor-driven. But because this is to me, this is the biggest question that faces us today, the scaling up.
I like the question, but I'd had to answer through another question, which is this the role of the private sector, and especially like the off-grid developers and operators to go for this diversification? Like, I'm taking the job of an agri-developer in the villages that I serve. I'm also having discussion with the telcos, with the digital companies, talking with industries, manufacturers, whatever. Basically, I feel like I'm trying through energy access, and as I said, I do believe that this is not an end, it's just a mean, and we have to think about shifting this entire industry and sector from selling rural electrons to creating real wealth. That's my motto. Right. So by creating real wealth, I kind of put myself in a position, like de facto, to find ways to create this wealth, to generate wealth. So if there is no existing companies or businesses or productive users or manufacturers or activities or initiatives already inside, I'm going to be this initiator, this sparkle to create it. But it's a lot of work, and maybe sometimes that prevents me or pushes me away from the very first job, which is, building mini grids, operating them properly, and serving the community. So I do it, and I'm very willing to do it. But we are going much more far than what was the original, job title and job position.
My very simple question is, how can we find 1,000 Camilles?
I don't know, start with me, and then we will see with the 999 others. I don't know, I think that's, okay, from all the speech and the interventions that I make, I always talk about a few things, and they're always the same. And I guess that maybe the first one, even before financing, and financing is like one on the top, I'd say dialogue. I think that we need more conversation, but not necessarily these kind of conferences. We need to sit around the table, to have workshops, to put DFIs, VCs, public sectors, regulators, and private sectors around the same table and try to find solutions. I even go to as far as, put us in the room, just lock us up in this room, and as long as we don't come up with a solution, then we just stay in the room, and we'll see what happens. But we need, at some point, to be more efficient and move a little bit away from talks and start acting a little bit more.
So would this suggest that documenting the kinds of benefits that occur from each of these is useful and can be used to bring in other players?
Yeah, and open sourcing. Like, for instance, I was talking about the agri-grid model that we've been working. The entire work that we've been doing on that model, we open sourced it for any other mini-grid developer in the community, not only in Madagascar, but throughout Africa. So it's up to developers to get access to this information, to use it, and to implement it on the ground.
I think this is a lot of knowledge sharing, which I think is something you had brought up. I want to make sure, because I love what's happening here, and I want it to continue, but I want to make sure to ask one more question before because it's quite
I'm going to keep on asking questions as long as it takes. But I was going to ask Nora. Nora, you were talking about agriculture. And what I'm wondering is, and this is drawing on what Camille is saying, if you have to do, for example, a cold storage, which is based on solar, or you have to do solar pumps, which are based on solar, will you do it, or will you find somebody else to do it?
So me personally, you mean? Me personally, I am also doing it, if you want. But no, let's say, for me, one of the very big advantages by widening our view, not only to the energy sector, but really embracing, and I really say embracing the agricultural sector, the water sector, is that suddenly we have 3 times players, 3 times investors. And this is what we actually see in MG Farm and in the projects in North Africa, that suddenly at least we have much more on the public and on the private side, there are much more investors. Sometimes these are renewable energy companies, but most of the times these are agricultural companies. You know, even big companies are big agro companies, etc., are interested by renewable energy because it's a new infrastructure possibilities for them. They can buy lands in places which are much more remote. They can do access water as well, etc. So the opportunities are multiple for multiple players. This is for me one of the most important, let's say, experience I'm doing, or we are doing in taking the Nexus seriously. But the type of funding, maybe to come back a bit to this question, I think it should be a mix, public, private. I think the public sector should support or somehow pass particularly the subsidies that they are economizing by not subsidizing agricultural electricity. This is something that, you know, could be very nicely used to support electrification with renewable energies in the agriculture sector. But typically in the mini-grid space, we say it's good if the infrastructure is owned by the communities, so somehow this is also part of public funding. But then the investment into the pumps, the storages, etc., this is something depends surely from the countries, but often here you find private sector players. And even we know it's better if people own this. They will take care of it. And these things become commodities more and more. You're going to go in 5 years to IKEA and buy. Actually, here in Berlin, you can already buy your solar pump at IKEA. Oh. Yeah, Bauhaus. You don't need a public player anymore to install your solar pump on your field.
No, I personally also think that government need to consciously make effort into these communities and then create an enabling environment that will attract private investors, that will also create an architecture that will bring about innovation from either individual, group of people. Once the environment is supportive, people may come in, and that will lead to the creation of wealth in the community, as Doc also mentioned, and make the project the community owned. Once the communities believe that they own the project, they will be able to handle it in such a way that it could create wealth for the community, and then, and as Doctor said, and other multiplier effects may follow up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure, before we open it up to audience questions, you did pick up your microphone, please.
Not question, but to add point with what Sanjay was saying. Actually, unless we integrate energy with agriculture, sometimes there is a question of sustainability, especially in Africa and European nations, where still there is demand for food security. In Ethiopia, we do have one practice. The last year, our Prime Minister has initiated about the drought-tolerant wheat production, so that we can sustain our people with food security. So, as a sample, government has distributed pumps by having from rivers and produce irrigation. They couldn't afford the fuel cost. They are asking for solar pumps. Right. The system is forcing us to do that. That's really what I can say. Once we create the gap in the demand, then people will strive for that. Second, we have one practice which actually will start. The DREAM project is decentralized renewable energy access agricultural management. It means we need to have boreholes, then solar pumps, then irrigation. Not only irrigation, but high-value crops, where it is a mini-grid. People can have energy for agriculture, for electrification, and for other purpose, including the cold storage as well. They can do that. So if we can integrate through the food, water, food, energy nexus, it will be very wonderful and appropriate, especially solar and off-grid ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is an interesting conversation. I think that a key word that hasn't been mentioned is breaking down silos. I love it. I love to mention that in conversation. But that's true. I mean, we're all talking about that. That can be agriculture, that can be digital, that can be other sectors. So I think that we all agree, public sector, private sector, DFIs and financiers, that breaking down silos is probably one of the keys to moving the path forward. Then going back to the question of financing and how innovation can be a lever for scaling up the industry. I want to go back on what was mentioned, the role of subsidy. I think that this is very key. And I'm just going to remind everyone that energy access for more than a century all over the globe has been largely, massively subsidized, whether it was renewable or conventional energy, for one purpose, to make it affordable for the population to get access to it and to consume. Now, if you compare the cost of electricity, LCOE for technical people, of electricity in northern countries, to the cost of electricity in African countries, in sub-Saharan African countries, for instance, it's much lower in northern countries. But the population is wealthier. So we are having this discussion around, okay, how much money should we put on the table? How much should come from the private investment side? And how much should come from as subsidies from public investment? And I think that it's not about, okay, how much do we have in our pockets? Is, okay, how much should we be putting on the table so that the cost of electricity, the tariff, is affordable for the population, knowing that we're talking about the most fragile population on the planet. So as long as we haven't solved that question, meaning that we have to come up with an answer to the question, what is the soft spot for the LCOE, for the tariff of electricity, we're going to be like running in circles. And we're still going to be missing money to move forward and move at scale and do it faster. Like at the moment, I think that time is very key. We're behind schedule, and we're still having this conversation. While we should probably be sitting around the table again and be talking about, okay, what is needed to achieve the goal, but in the best conditions ever. Yes, we want to break down silos and build nexuses between sectors. But at what cost, at what price, and where is the money going to come from?
So I'll ask, what do we need to do? I mean, one of the questions that I have here is like, what barriers are there? But I think we know what the barriers are. What do we need to do?
Well, I still have the mic.
Please,
so
yes.
I'll follow up on that question. Well, I like what was being said. I think it was maybe a little bit implicit, but I think that the representative of governments and institutions on my right side and my left side, they do understand and they do acknowledge that they need to facilitate. The role of government is to facilitate and enable the environment. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is one of the key aspects of our journey and of our teamwork. Then I think that financiers and private sectors, and financiers I mean both the private investor side and lenders and the donors and the DFIs, need to come to an agreement and agree to share risks. And I think that we also need to keep in mind that for DFIs and donors, that we need to agree on that soft spot and the where we want to be in terms of affordability of tariffs for and customers. And for the private investors, we also need to make sure that they do understand that it's not all about financial return, but that it's also about social return and environmental return. Because at the moment, this doesn't really count in the equation, and that's what makes it sometimes so difficult to come to agreements and on business cases. So we're all running in circles.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure to give a chance. You mentioned government first. Government, would you like to respond to what your panelists just said? Please.
Yes, one thing is the policy matters. So the policy should be accommodative. It should even attract the private sectors in such a way that there is a kind of package how people can get involved in the investment of renewable energy, especially for the off-grid. Such kind of policy may include some kind of options how they can be attracted more. If we take in Ethiopia, the energy we do have is much cheaper, especially hydropower. So this will attract private sectors to come and work upon assembling of panels. If someone comes to Ethiopia and they manufacture the paneling, the battery, the lithium, it will be much attractive and much profitable. Because when we are subsidizing the energy that we produce per kilowatt hour, it means a lot that manufacturers can come and they work up on that. That is one of the showcase, really, we can have to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Yes, Deputy Minister, please.
Yes, I think we need the right policies from the government in terms of tariff, how government could be able to fashion out policies and programs that will be able to minimize and ensure that the tariffs are properly done. That will go a long way to ensure that private sector will be attractive. It will make attractive to the private sector, and they will come in once the right policies and programs are put in place by the government. They may come in to be able to support. And individual ones, that tariffs are also attractive to the people, individual in their own way. Once empowered, they could be able to contribute and then also pay the taxes. And government need to also diversify the area to make sure that individual can also get access to other income facilities to be able to generate their own income. In Ghana, we have a policy that those communities, we need to create an atmosphere that could allow farmers, could give farmers opportunity, or rural communities opportunity to farm throughout the year. And once you farm throughout the year, you can be able to at least raise income. And this irrigation system that could allow you to farm throughout the year should be a conscious effort that the government should be able to take up and then create necessary environment and the right architecture so that the citizens could be empowered. We need to also bring in other MDAs like tourism industry, like agriculture, my sister mentioned, and other to the area so that people could take advantage and be able to create wealth. And once they are able to create wealth, they can be able to finance the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm enjoying the conversation that we're having up on stage. I hope you are too. And I want to invite our audience also to take part. We're at the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. We are in dialogue here, and I'd like to invite if we have any questions from the audience. I think I see one over here, Linda. We'll have our first audience question for the Europasaal in 2023. I'm quite excited.
Thank you very much for the wonderful discussion. Very, very insightful. I'm Stefan Schurig from the Foundations platform of 20. And one aspect where I would love to just hear a little bit of your thoughts, and I'm not sure to which or to whom I should direct the question, maybe all of you give it a quick snapshot, is when you look on energy and you look at it from the services, when it comes to many regions in sub-Saharan Africa, the main service attached to energy is cooking. And I wonder when the time is right to connect electrification of cooking based on renewables. I know there's a lot going on at the moment. It sort of becomes the hot topic now, literally, obviously. But the question is, shouldn't we sort of also consider electrification of cooking as sort of an upscaling of the investments needed for renewables? And shouldn't this be seen as a positive thing rather than a negative thing, and really address this hugely important subject of how we cook food and how we consider the health impacts related to it as an important driver for it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to sum up, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And this is a very interesting question, but that's also a very tricky question. It's very complicated. At Anka and in Madagascar, we've tried, and we are at the moment going through a pilot on electric cooking. So providing electric appliances for cooking and connecting them to the grid and so on. I think that when it comes to cooking, what is complicated is that you have to compete with a initial and conventional resource that you can find for free just nearby, near your house. And that is very, very complicated to compete, because ultimately what the end customers will want to see is a very affordable price for the service that is getting access to. But how can you compete with a 0-cent dollar or whatever currency on that matter? So I think that we have to be very creative, and there's probably like a large amount of money that's going to be that is going to have to be injected, on that subsector or sector to make it happen. I think that we have to consider not only funding, the renewing or the purchase of new appliances for people to use electric appliances, but also how to finance the tariff that is going to be affordable for people to use. We can think about feed-in tariffs. We can think about mixing tariffs and bringing subsidy on OPEX based for this kind of use. But you're going to have to monitor specifically the use of electricity that is going to go for cooking in comparison to other uses, for instance. It gets a little bit complex, but there's still like a lot of opportunity coming to that, especially for carbon financing, for instance. And we're talking about innovation in financing. Carbon financing in the blending of finance for decentralized renewable energy projects is very interesting. And obviously cooking is one of the most interesting angle this should be tackled. But I think that there's still a lot of learning, and I know probably Nora, you have some feedback as well on that, and I know that there's been studies, but it's, to my point, a very difficult sector to address.
Noara Kabir, please, yes.
Yeah, what I would like to say, let's say being more than 20 years in that sector, is that I actually see some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of cooking, which is particularly related to the new electrical cooking appliances which we find more and more in the market. So when we speak about electric cooking, we're not speaking about, electric cookers as we know them in Europe, etc. So this is not so much the topic, but like this kind of electric rice cookers, high pressure cookers, etc., which are spread around and which are sometimes also digital, etc. So this is, in my experience, definitely still a problem in terms of of electricity supply, price of tariffs, etc. But the problem that we have with cooking, and particularly with the use of natural resources in cooking, we don't have it only in very pure communities. Even well-doing communities in urban areas are using charcoal, etc. And in all this area, electric cooking, and particularly electric cooking appliances, are from my perspective, a chance at least to address a big part of this sector's problem. Not every of them, but I see quite some opportunities coming up there.
Good to see that you see opportunities. I want to make sure, did you also want to respond? Okay, I'd like to do that, but please. Okay,
good. Yes, it is possible way, but there should be some stage. We can think about that. For example, if you take in village where we don't have always electric system, there should be some way out. What we have been doing is encouraging, for example, like biogas, where really people can have alternative energy. The second one is the fire saving or energy saving cook stoves, where we can really make with the local material so that people can be saving more forest where they are. This is the real fact, by the way, in Africa and for sure in many parts of the world, what we are talking. In urban areas, in the semi-urban, where there is a connectivity, there are appliances where really we are trying to have some of the component where we are assembling in the rural technology that they can save some energies. So we can have in different stage, thinking in village and in urban and semi-urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes left in our panel, and I want to make sure I leave enough time for a final question for each of you, but I want to see if we have another question in the audience. I see one here, Linda. Thank you very much for that question on cooking. It's quite exciting.
Hi, thank you for the interesting discussion. My name is Sonakshi, and I'm originally from India. I'm currently in Berlin as a Alexander von Humboldt Fellow.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to understand that the global north and global south, it has very different definitions of innovation and both financing. So when we see these things happening, there are obvious gaps in both the economies or the sectors, as we would say. So my question is, one, is there a need to bridge that gap, if there exists one, which obviously does? And if so, how? I'm sure this was a discussion part, but I think I missed it. But yes, it would be great if we could.
The first question is there a gap that needs to be bridged? I think we can agree there is a gap that needs to be bridged. And then how do we do that? And we have to answer that and solve this problem in around 2 minutes, so I can be sure to leave enough time for you. Is there anyone here on the panel that would like to address?
So yes, there is a gap. And the best way to bridge the gap is by agreeing on definitions of what constitutes finance for commercial finance and what constitutes grant finance. This is at the heart of the big debate these days, the $100 billion a year debate that occurred. At the end of the day, monies which bring down the cost of capital can and should be counted as monies that are made available for these purposes. Similarly, resources that help in providing guarantees and therefore attract investment can be counted. But believe you me, these are fairly obvious things, but there are slippery slopes in these as well.
Thank you very much. I want to bring our panel to a close. We have just a few minutes left, but I'd like to ask each of you to close with this thought. From your perspective, whether it is a government perspective, whether it's from 114 countries, tomorrow 115, or if it's from an industry perspective, what do you think is the most pressing kind of support that you need in your sector to advance the off-grid sector? Your Excellency, I'd like to start off with your perspective from Ethiopia.
Okay. First, to say support, what do we have at hand is very important. In Ethiopia, we do have a lot of graduates from universities and from vocational schools. These people they are knowledgeable, but lack skill. So energy is to engage people in such a way that we can create a small micro-enterprise where they are trained, capable to make them get done. That is where really we need demand or we need support on capacity building at micro level that will build up to the large one. Second one is to have really getting platform of learning one from the other one. Benchmarking is, I think, very good. If there are some place in a globe where the private sectors, especially the young graduates, that come together and then get engaged on the energy supply, on the energy assembling system, these kind of things are really wonderful, and I hope it will work for many parts of our world, besides the resource mobilization that is obvious for everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Mbomba, what kind of support do you need?
Thank you. We need support in the area of manpower development. If we are able to develop our capacity base as a country, that will bring about a lot of understanding. And once people understand and appreciate what you are implementing, it makes it easier for you to be able to carry it. We also need what will propel the government to be able to build the capacity of the locals, to be able to create wealth on their own. And once wealth is created, they could be able to handle whatever development is trickled down to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ajay Mathur, from your perspective, what support do you need to advance the off-grid sector?
Can I cheat and say 2 things that I need?
Okay, I'll allow it.
Thanks. The first is an agreement on the 3 or 4 regulations, rules, policies that can help scale up the off-grid sector in countries. The second is, in order to bring that money in, we need guarantees. I would like the G7 or the G20 countries to provide the guarantees that pull in private sector investment into this environment where the rules have been agreed to, and where, on the other side, the investor feels comfortable that he or she will get repaid.
Thank you very much. Camille André Bataille.
Can I get two as well?
You may also give two.
So, first, obviously, again, I'm going to say a subsidy if we want to get profitable business cases while at the same time providing affordable services to the end customers. I think that this is very key, again. And the second one is probably from my perspective, because I agree with everything that has been mentioned, so I can mention something a little bit different from the private sector's perspective, is the processes that we go through. I think that when the money is agreed on the donor side, for instance, it has to go through different channels and different levels until the moment it actually, follows in the hand of the private sector. And that whole process can be very cumbersome and very long, and we cannot wait. Like waiting 2 years, 3 years to get the money from point A to point B is never going to work for us.
Thank you very much. To close us out, Noir Kabir.
I keep the tradition of this panel and also come up with two wishes.
Fantastic.
So my first wish, but this is rather a wish to the whole sector, is that we practice perspective extension. I think maybe speaking of myself, coming from the energy sector, that we really extend our perspective to the agricultural sector itself, to really understand also the energy potential, the energy access, the potential of storage that we have in the agricultural sector, etc. So that, and it's very, very difficult in my experience to engage agricultural actors and energy actors with each other. So I wish us a perspective extension, all of us, into the nexus, into the other sector. And the second wish would be a perspective change, means that we stop to look at rural areas as the last mile, which is the most difficult to reach out, but see the potential which is there. And again, today I'm advocating for agriculture, which can make it actually the first mile from where we are generating renewable energies, from where we are generating clean energy, from where we are generating economic and social prosperities for our societies.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of my panelists. Thank you so much to the audience also for your questions. I have a quick announcement. If you do want to see the next studio session, which we have to wrap up in about 45 seconds in order to make, you can stay here in the Europasaal, or you can head over to the Weltsaal to see those studio sessions. The next one is on renewables as drivers of supply. Panelists, thank you all so much. It was really lovely to get to listen to you dialogue with one another. Thank you so much, Dr. Habtamo Itefagaleta of Ethiopia, Thomas Umbomba of Ghana, Adematur of the ISA, Camille André Bataille, Anka Madagascar, and last but certainly not least, Noir Kabir. Thank you all so much for today.